All right, we've been using stored procedures as they relate to triggers. They're called functions in the nomenclature of Postgres. In some other systems, it's called a stored procedure, and they have subroutines and functions. But let's kind of walk through what the pieces are. One of the unique properties of Postgres is you don't have to do it in their specific language. There's also implementations of a variety of languages to do stored procedures in, including things like JavaScript. So here is what is in a stored procedure. There is the piece that the database sees, and then there's the piece that it's going to call when it actually runs the stored procedure. This piece up here, create or replace function and a name and a parameter list, and the return type of this parameter list, in this case varchar. That is the piece that it sees. In Postgres, these procedures are strongly typed based on both the name and the parameter list. So if you have one function that has one parameter and you have the same name with two parameters, those are two different procedures. That can be both good and bad. You can create a lot of overlapping procedures, but if you lose the procedure as in you go and change it, you'll have to go hunting for how to go and drop the old procedure. And then there is a token. The token starts and ends with $. You can put something in between. Some people like to put $body $. But that extends until it finds the next matching token. And usually I specify what the language is at the end, although you don't have to. You could put that up here before as well. But you say language, and this is the language that we've been using, which is the native language of Postgres, PLPG SQL. And the stuff in between, all of this stuff between the markers, is in whatever language you specify, and you get a choice. Now, you can call these by just doing a select. You can do select function name and whatever the parameters are. And when you call it, you get back whatever is the stuff in that function, how it returns stuff. And we'll give you an example here. But this is a complete language and a very powerful language that they've built that's specifically designed for working with Postgres data types. It's reasonably fast, although it is not the fastest language. You can actually build these as C code and have it actually compile them, although it is a nuisance to do that. Those are faster, so you're paying for speed with a different language. You can also put these instead of in PG in this language, you can just put them in SQL. That is also quite useful sometimes to have functions that are just in SQL that do something kind of like a view, but it allows you to pass parameters into your view. And the reason you would want to do that is a performance reason. If you have some parameter that you can pass deep into the view, and instead of the view having to construct a huge set of data because this thing isn't determined, it can construct a small set of data on the inside and work it out from that. That can be hugely useful in terms of performance. So stored procedures in the language SQL are also very useful. Although I don't use them all the time, I'm aware of them. I always have to go and look up what the syntax is for exactly getting it right. But sometimes you're looking at it going, wow, I just need to fix this query that is running so slow, and I can do it with a stored procedure and a view combining the two things together. So you create a view that does the select from the stored procedure, that shuffles the things around and makes it presentable, and you do a stored procedure that it calls that allows you to substitute the things in underneath. So there's some performance reasons, even if you're not just building in this language all the time. But here's an example of a function that just goes out and says, if we've got this thing in the CT config table, we're going to return it. Otherwise, we're going to have a different value. It's a pretty simple one. We'll just create it and see how it goes. It's just called function name, not anything special there. And we've got another one in there that'll show you a different feature. But we'll just crank this one up. And it created. And, it doesn't do much, okay, quite honestly. But here's one from actual homework 13.4 on the states that returns a particular row. One of the things that you can do in this is you can build stored procedures that inside a loop return, so that the next time it wants the next row, it calls it again and returns it. And this is an example of that. And that suddenly starts to become really incredibly useful in relationship to selects. And I'll actually grade that one, because that's going to give me the results. And I'll look into why that didn't grade and figure it out. But yeah, this is the stored procedure, and what it does is it has a record of a particular type, in this case this table, and it does, for this record in select, where we have a particular set of where clauses, return the next row in this, which means it returns this until it gets down here to the bottom, and it does a return, and that means you've gotten all the data. So we can actually run it, and when we get done running it, we can get the results in select star from that function. And you notice instead of select the function, I'm doing select star from the function, because it's returning one row at a time. And let's run this other piece. Okay, I see the problem. I failed to actually run this last piece. And consequently, when I went to grade it, of course, it didn't give me the grade. So let's actually run that. And it ran, but let's actually grade it. And yes, as soon as instead of just cutting and pasting the stored procedure, I cut and paste the select that calls it from the from and run that, it actually gave me the grade. So yes, that's much better.